You know, we're always told that the secret to our motivation is all in our head. But what if I told you the real control panel isn't in your brain, but in your gut? Today, we're diving into the incredible science of your metabolic architecture and what it really means for your drive.
We've all heard this one, right? The idea that motivation is just this mental game, a battle of willpower, that if you just try hard enough, you can make anything happen. But it turns out, that's not the whole story. Not even close.
All right, so let's start with what we thought we knew, the old story of motivation. For the longest time, the view was pretty simple. Your mind is the CEO, barking orders from the top floor, and your body is just the factory floor, meant to carry them out. But what scientists are finding now is that this model isn't just a little bit off, it's completely backward. And this is where everything changes. What if that feeling of drive, or that total lack of it, isn't some failure of character? What if it's actually a direct, physical message being sent from your stomach right to your brain? So that brings us right to our next section, your body's secret signals. It's time to decode what your body's actually trying to tell you.
See, the latest science shows that motivation is an embodied process. That means it's rooted in our physical biology. These aren't just vague feelings we have. They're real, tangible chemical messages that literally act like a volume dial for your ambition.
So what are these messages? Well, they're called metabolic signals. Just think of them as live status reports on your body's fuel tank. Your gut, your fat cells, they're all constantly taking inventory and sending these little memos straight to brain headquarters. And at the center of it all is this constant tug of war between two main hormones. On one side, you've got ghrelin. That's the go signal. When your stomach is empty, it basically yells at your brain, hey, fuel's low, go find something rewarding. But on the other side, you've got leptin, the stop signal. It comes from your fat cells and calmly tells your brain, okay, we're good, tanks are full, conserve energy.
But it's a little more detailed than just go and stop. You've got other messengers too. Hormones like PYY and GLP-1 are the just ate signals. They're released right after a meal for that immediate feeling of, whew, I'm full. Then, once all that energy is packed away, insulin comes in. It sends a memo to the brain's reward centers that pretty much says, mission accomplished, you can stand down for now. So how does this all work together? It's actually a pretty logical four-step system. First, your body senses its energy levels. Second, your brain translates those hormonal signals. Third, it integrates all that info to fine-tune your dopamine system. And finally, you get the output. Your actual feeling of motivation gets cranked up or dialed way down.
Okay, so now for the really fascinating part, the brain's motivation dial. Let's look at exactly how those signals from your body get translated into the chemistry of your mind. The main hub for all these signals is a tiny but super powerful part of your brain called the hypothalamus. You can think of it as the central computer. It takes in all these reports from your gut and fat cells and then decides what it all means for your overall level of drive. And once the hypothalamus figures it all out, it acts like a DJ for your dopamine system. When ghrelin is high because you're hungry, it cranks the motivation dial up. Rewards seem way more exciting and worth the effort. But when leptin and insulin are high after you've eaten, that dial gets turned way down. And suddenly, that same big task just feels like too much work. So this is absolutely crucial to understand. Dopamine isn't really the pleasure chemical. It's the motivation chemical. It's the currency your brain uses to decide if a goal is worth spending energy on. And your metabolic state, how much fuel you have in the tank, determines how much of that currency your brain is willing to spend.
All right, let's pull this out of the textbook and into our actual lives. How does this all feel in the real world? That brings us to Section 4, Biology's Influence on Effort. Well, it looks pretty much exactly like this. When you're in a fasting state and that go signal, ghrelin, is surging, studies show that we become more persistent. We're way more willing to grind through a tough task for a reward. But on the flip side, when you're in a fed state and that stop signal, leptin, is high, our drive for those exact same tasks just plummets. Your brain is basically saying, hey, we're fueled up. No need to hustle so hard right now.
This explains a really common thing you hear about today. You know when people who do intermittent fasting report feeling this incredible sense of focus? That's not just in their heads. It's not a placebo. It's a direct result of ghrelin turning up their brain's dopamine dial, biologically getting them ready for action.
And this brings us to the most empowering part of all of this. If this is our biological wiring, can we actually work with it? The answer is a huge yes. So in our final section, we're talking about hacking your natural drive.
Look, the big takeaway here isn't to try and overpower your body with sheer willpower. Honestly, that's a losing battle. The real key is to understand these natural signals and rhythms and then align what we want to do with them. It's about working with your own system, not against it. So, here's a super practical cheat sheet. If you want to boost your focus for a big project, maybe work out beforehand to get that motivating ghrelin surge. To avoid that classic afternoon slump, time your carbs strategically so you don't get a huge insulin crash. And the foundation for all of it? Make consistent sleep a priority. It's what keeps your baseline hormone levels in balance.
And, the implications here are massive, way beyond just our daily productivity. This research is opening up incredible new avenues for treating things like depression by targeting these motivation circuits, for helping fight obesity by fixing issues like leptin resistance, and even finding ways to boost drive as we get older.
So let's just reframe this whole thing. That feeling of low motivation, it isn't a personal failure. It is not a flaw in your character. It's actually an incredibly elegant survival system, one that's been perfected over millions of years to make sure your ambition never writes a check that your body can't cash.
And that leaves us with one final thought. We spend so much of our time and energy trying to manage what's going on in our heads. But maybe the real secret is to start listening, really listening, to the conversation that's happening below the neck. Because as we've just seen, your motivation isn't just in your head. The real question is, are you listening to what your body is telling you?